And he ain't going anywhere. Egypt's President Mohamed Morsi is furiously clinging on to power. This after rebuffing an army ultimatum to force a resolution to the country's political crisis. And as the clock ticks very loudly indeed, the ruling Muslim Brotherhood is seeking to mass its supporters to defend him. But the Islamist leader is looking increasingly isolated, with ministers resigning and the Liberal opposition refusing to talk to him. So where to from here? Will Morsi cling on to the bitter end? Is this an army coup by default? And is there anybody at all within the opposition with the capability to step in and take over? Now, here with me to discuss this further is Shireen Foti, an Egyptian-American lawyer and professor at the Sorbonne University here in Paris. Hello. Also, France 24's Mohamed Salem, who's been covering the revolution from the very beginning. Mohamed. From London, Zinab Yassin, a member of the Freedom and Justice Party. From Cairo, we're hoping to talk to later Egyptian commentator Mohamed Al-Dashan, and also from Cairo, Miral Brinji, a spokeswoman for the Dastur Party, or Constitution Party, that was set up by Mohamed El-Baradei and a key organiser of this latest round of protests. Now, a reminder, people, you can also join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag F24debate. But first, France 24's Gallagher Fenwick has just sent us through this report from Cairo.
As the deadline set by the Egyptian army looms ahead, Mohamed Morsi's supporters say they're ready to protect their president. Although they're wielding clubs and wearing improvised protective gear, they say they will proceed peacefully.
Some guy asked me, "What is this?" I told him this is what I call a toothpick. A small toothpick, not a club or a weapon.
We don't have weapons. We are just protecting ourselves because for the past 6 months we have been attacked by the vandals sent by the opposition.
While the opposition has recently been drawing impressive crowds, this one looks somewhat thinner in comparison. Fully aware of it, one man is upset at us for filming from this angle.
At this point, the Egyptian people and the whole world knows that the opposition's claim that they had 20 million signatures was a big lie. The reality is, and this was verified through the army's helicopters that had a bird's eye view on the crowds, the reality is that they barely had 2 million people on the streets. And us, here alone, we already have 4 million people.
Those here feel that they're being cheated out of what they earned legitimately.
We're the ones who are behaving democratically. They're being anti-democratic. They've abandoned democracy, am I not right?
After waiting behind the scenes for decades, even in jail for some of them, the Islamists have taken center stage for the past year. And it is highly unlikely that they will leave it without putting up a fight politically, but perhaps physically as well.
Now, that was Gallagher Fenwick reporting earlier from Cairo. Now, just take a look at those powerful images beaming to us live from Cairo's Tahrir Square. Mohamed, you've been covering this revolution from the very beginning. It does appear that President Morsi has backed himself into a corner.
Yeah, that's true. But actually, it's the army who did it to him. Like, in a way, he also, of course, is to blame somehow because of all what he's done. I mean, he made promises he didn't hold. He excluded the opposition and other factions that he promised to include. And I think he's a bit to blame in all that. So we'll see what will happen.
Shireen, Reuters has been reporting earlier, army sources is saying that the army's roadmap would dissolve the parliament and suspend the constitution if the two sides can't sit down and find a resolution in the next 24 hours. What do you think the chances of either side being able to sit down and negotiate their way through this?
I think at this point, things are so incredibly polarized that there's not necessarily an end in sight in terms of what the next step will be. I don't think at this point we can make any conclusions about, how the army is going to act, how the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood are going to act, or how the supporters of or the opponents of Morsi are going to act. But what we can be sure of is that there has been a voicing of an incredible amount of dissent to Morsi's regime. Over the past year, he has served not only to alienate a large segment, if not a majority of the population, but he's systematically acted in an illegal manner with regards to the Egyptian constitution. He's violated all tenets of the basic rule of law, which is recognized on the international scale and by the Egyptian court, as was decided today by the Court of Cassation decision. And there's just been a general environment of violence and lack of respect, lack of inclusion of all sides. Morsi did come to power following a revolution or an uprising, if we don't want to give it the term revolution. This seems to be the continuation of the revolution. This show of dissent towards Morsi, of the fact that he did not adequately take all sides and move forward, that is what we're seeing in these demonstrations these days.
At this point, let me just bring in Zinab Yassin from London. I mean, hearing all of this, the president seems to be losing support from left, right and centre. At which point is he going to give up?
After his term, I hope, not before his term. He was democratically elected, and even if he wants to step down, he shouldn't, because we elected him.
But
he should wait for the 4 years.
But I just want to refer to a tweet that we've just received from one of our viewers, Zinab, and it's from David Lovewick, who says President Morsi was democratically elected, but gave that up when he said he was above the Constitution.
Okay, first of all, he didn't do anything above the Constitution, and if he did, then he should be trialled for that, but he hasn't. He explained clearly he had to do that to return the powers, presidential powers that were not there. He did that to control the country, to bring stability to the country. On the points that your guest said as well, they haven't given Morsi a chance. It's not just been a year where they've come out now and said they don't want him. It's from 100 days. After 100 days of him being in power, they've come out and said they don't want him. I mean, if we look at the West, which should be the ideal example of democracy, after what measure, how can it be reasonable to measure any political figure or any president after 1 year? That's not a measure of anything.
Shireen Foti, I see that you want to respond to that.
Yes, well, Morsi explicitly stated in his presidential decree, constitutional declaration in November of 2012, that he was, quote, above the law in terms of judicial review. Now, judicial review is a very basic tenet of any society, any constitutional structure around the world, which says that the executive branch is somehow, the acts of the executive branch will be judged by the judicial branch to make sure that no one power within the three powers has too much power. Morsi explicitly dismantled this balance of powers by saying that, no, I am above this procedure of judicial review. I am not subject to any type of review by the judicial proceedings, and by removing the prosecutor general from his position, he also served to dismantle this structure. So when he's engaging in these actions, he not only has given up his constitutional authority in the sense of the institutional balance of power, but he has also given up his mandate by the fact that he has not ruled for the whole of the Egyptian people. He has acted in an invalid way, an illegal manner that then takes away his legitimacy.
Mohammed El-Dashan in Cairo, let me just ask you this. In a piece written by you in Foreign Policy, which was published on its website today, you argue that this is not the time to be celebrating, that it's not a World Cup, there's no need to be out there honking your horn, but instead this is a military coup. And yet, does the army really want to take over?
Well, the army's main interest is to protect its own interests, most of them financial and economic and so on. And they will do that whenever they feel that there is enough instability in the country that could threaten those particular interests. So do they want to take over the country? Not necessarily. Are they willing to do it? Absolutely. And we seem to be heading into a model where, not unlike the Turkish army at the height of its intervention in government affairs, whenever they get a government they don't like, they're going to overthrow them. So that's quite a dangerous move on their part, and it definitely threatens the tenets of the democracy we're trying to build.
But it isn't
which,
the
by the
case,
way,
Mohammed, isn't it the case, though, that they got their fingers burnt the last time that they were running the show? I mean, do you really believe that they believe that this is the only way forward, that it's up to them now to guide the country out of this mess?
absolutely not. I mean, I'm absolutely in favor of early elections, and I do believe that millions of people taking the square over the past days is democracy as it should be. That people expressing their opinion, they're absolutely free to demand that. That would be my main demand. Now, if they got their fingers burned, you'd think that, but if you look at the people's reaction on the street to the declaration of the army, that the level of support that the army still seems to maintain within the Egyptian people, despite all the disasters they've done, all the nightmares they put people through. 12,000 civilians put through military trials and so on, but they still command such a high level of respect and of liking within the Egyptian population that I don't think we can talk about burnt fingers, unfortunately.
At this point, let me also bring in Maral from Cairo. Maral Brinji, being a member of Dostur Party, which is a party established by Mohammed el-Baradei, who's now been touted as very much a potential leader. He certainly was out there in the cold, but things have changed, haven't they, Maral?
Yes, of course. I think that the Dostur Party, as well as the National Salvation Front, has been successfully able to mobilize the people against the current regime during the protests and the demonstrations that took place after the constitutional decree was issued by the president. I think that the Dostur Party is originally a grassroots movement that's really making a difference on the grassroots level all over the country. This is for one. But I would like to comment about some of the things that were said earlier in the debate. The idea that how can we evaluate a president after 1 year? I think there are several measures in which we can use to evaluate his performance, one of which is that not one promise that he has made to the people has been kept. His 100 days promises that were made to improve the state of the economy, to improve the state of the political stability in order to improve the economy, to provide services, the electricity, the power outages, the water shortages, the gas shortages. I think it's a matter of trust, and this was also mentioned in the army statement that was issued recently, that basically bad management is the real reason why people are protesting against Morsi now. The thing is that the Muslim Brotherhood is a very important non-state actor in the entire region, if not the entire world. And I think that on several levels of analysis, from the international to the regional to the internal, I think they were really aiming to consolidate their power by changing the identity of Egypt and the identity of Egyptians. And I think that, the protests that happened on June 30th were the most diverse collection of Egyptians ever, from religious Muslims to, liberal seculars, to Muslims, to Copts, to different black, white. I think that this is a very important element that is not present in all the demonstrations that are supporting Dr. Morsi. This is one.
Maral, let me at this point bring in Zainab. I mean, Zainab, I am looking at those images there of hundreds of thousands of people in Tahrir Square and elsewhere in Cairo. I mean, surely, if I was a political leader looking at that, the public is sending me a very clear message. They have lost confidence. Do you sincerely believe that President Morsi can retain power? And if he is pushed from power, what would be the consequences?
I do believe that he can maintain power, because that's one side. The pictures we're seeing now, that's one side of the story, but there's for and against on the street. The streets of Egypt are split in two, literally. There's just as much for Morsi as much as there is against. You can't even call this a revolution. A revolution is when most of the country is against the president. However, we see here, a large number of millions coming out saying they are with the president. So you can't, just because half the country doesn't want him for whatever reason, you can't just say it's a revolution. You can't call for a revolution every single year. When will Egypt ever see stability?
Numbers, really.
I think we need to
I would highly contest the millions part. I think I would highly contest the idea that of the numbers. I think that if the numbers were not, as Ms. Zainab was saying, if the numbers were not in favor of the protesters or the opposition, I think that the army would not have taken the initiative and asked the presidency to meet the people's demands.
I think if the numbers were as you were saying, I think you would have overthrown him a long time ago. You wouldn't have waited all this time. In these few days, these people won't even exceed 3 million. If they were even more than that, you would have overthrown him. To take Mubarak down, it was around 11 million.
But at the same time, there's 22 million people who've signed a petition.
And there was also a date
so-called 22 million.
A date that was set for the Egyptian people to go on the street. And what's really interesting is that all the aerial view we have seen today, the videos shot by the army from helicopters, and that was diffused today in numbers of media. And we saw the numbers of Egyptians and also all the people who commented and the media who said that the numbers exceeded even those who went out on January 25th when the revolution started. And what I also wanted to say, and which is very important, is that I think Egypt is still in the revolution, like Shireen said. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood and all the Islamic political current in Egypt says we have finished the revolution. Now we are in the democracy phases, we are in the legitimacy part. But I think the revolution still has a certain legitimacy in Egypt till there's a good president who comes and who rules the country. And the other day I was listening to a lady from Luxor who was talking to an Egyptian channel, and she was saying, we will overthrow every president who comes and who is not a good president, and we don't care even if we overthrow a president every year, till someone good comes and we feel that the situation has improved.
But there is a system in place to replace people. You don't always necessarily take to the streets and holler for the person
Of course,
to go.
but that's what I mean when I say that we are still in the revolutionary phase. We are not done with the revolution. So it's typically normal for me to see the people go and take the streets and ask and demand something and insist on it and maybe obtain it with the help of the army. Because I think also that the army didn't miss the situation to overthrow the Muslim Brotherhood, and we will still see what happens because they have called for the supporters to go on the street. And
Mohammed Salma, just press the pause button for the moment. Hold that thought, because we're going to have to take a break now. We'll be back very shortly with the second part of the Franz van Kat debate.